Hey, fine. Good evening, everybody. And well, I've obviously going to apologise for being late, but from Carmarthen to the Egypt Centre has taken 2.5 hours, 35 miles. So the last 4.5 miles, well over an hour. So anyway, okay. So let's get on with it. Let's kick off. Okay. So what I wanted to start with, first of all, before starting the talk, is really to say a thank you to Ken and to Sam for the work they've done the last two years and some months. It's been fabulous, and for somebody like me who isn't a scholar, isn't an expert in Egypt, but have been many times, it's been wonderful what you've done for me, and I'm sure I'm speaking for most people that attended your lectures, Ken. So I think I'm probably speaking on behalf of everybody. Is Arthur here? Arthur,
yes, you are.
oh, okay. So I'll let him. What about Gwyneth? Oh, okay. So I probably.
Yeah, all the gangs here. Don't worry, Peter. All the regulars.
Yeah, well,
we're all here. Don't worry.
Yeah, well, I think I'm probably speaking for all of them, and
yeah, we're all here.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. Thank you, Sam. Done and dusted. That. Thank you very much. Okay. I moved to Carmarthen some 8.5 years ago, and you can obviously guess by my accent I'm not Welsh. I'm actually Black Country, which is God's little area. So, but my wife is from Carmarthen, so we actually came down here to live. And just before coming down, I was supposed to be doing a course at the Bloomsbury, which was run by Rowland Jansen, who I know has spoken and done a series of things in Swansea, on not so much on Egyptology, but more on Egyptologists, and part of the thing was you had to pick a couple of Egyptologists and do a couple of essays, basically, at the end of the course. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened at Bloomsbury, but first of all, they made Rosalind redundant, and then they dropped all those types of courses, so it never happened. But if Ken's interested, I have still got the syllabus, and it could be an idea for something in the future. And of course, if you've got a copy of the Who's Who in Egyptology, which is inch and a half thick, I suppose, perhaps a bit more, you thumb through that looking, oh, who am I going to write on? There's a couple of obvious ones, but when I moved to Carmarthen, bingo, there was one, and there's a blue plaque in Carmarthen commemorating Ernest Harold Jones, who was an talented artist and became an Egyptologist. So there was your obvious choice. And then when the pandemic started, I actually started to put this PowerPoint together, not expecting ever to give it, to be honest. It was for my own benefit, just to learn a bit more about Harold Jones, who we're going to go through now a bit about his life and then the people he worked with. So, okay, he was born in Carmarthen. As I said, he is a good artist, brilliant artist, and he produced this pen and ink drawing of Little Bridge Street in Carmarthen, which is the street just down from where he was actually living. And his house, the house he lived in, is in Key Street in Carmarthen. And he produced this picture of Little Bridge Street, which is still there. After all the vandalism of the 60s by the council knocking down the old part of Carmarthen, fortunately they left this section alone. They didn't do any damage. So So if you wanted to go to Carmarthen, that you can still sort of get an idea of that view that Harold saw. Okay, just moving on a bit then. So he wasn't born in Carmarthen. He wasn't even born in Wales. He was born 7th of March 1877 to William and Mary, his mother and father, in Barnsley, Yorkshire. But they moved. They were Welsh, and they moved to Carmarthen, presumably for work. And Harold was actually educated at the grammar school in Carmarthen. The father was one of the principal masters in the grammar school, and his mother was in charge of the art college in Carmarthen, which is opposite St Peter's Church. Once Harold finished his schooling at the grammar school, he at 18, he actually then started teaching himself at the Carmarthen School of Art. And in 1902, he actually won a scholarship to the Royal College of Art in London. But he was a sickly person. He suffered badly with his chest, and he couldn't actually take the scholarship up, which was bad news for him, obviously. But it was at this time John Garstang spotted the work that he was doing and considered that he was good enough to actually be an artist on site in Egypt. And so after a bit of thought, he did offer Harold a job to take part in excavations in Egypt, but principally to record what was on the walls or whatever, the finds. And he started out there roughly around 1902 with Garstang. This is a quick run through. It'll be a bit more detailed in a moment. Eventually, he did move on away from Garstang and started to work with Theodore Davis in the Luxor area. And I guess that went quite well. And most of the stuff that you've got in the Egypt Centre and in the museum in Carmarthen is where the stuff comes from. 1911, sadly, Harold, his bad chest turned into worse things, and he did pass away. Okay, so that's just a quick rundown of his short life. He was there almost 9 years, and he proved to be very popular with the locals, as well as the academics, the Egyptologists, and that's what we'll have a look at for the rest of this presentation. We'll try and look at some of the locations he was at as well. There's one of them I really do struggle getting my tongue around the word, but I will try. So, as I said, 1902, Garstang offered him work in Egypt, and this is a bit about Garstang, really. He lived out quite a good life, really. I suppose what's that, 34, 60, 90 years he lived. So he went to Cambridge, Jesus College, Cambridge, where he graduated in maths. He got a pass, a 3 pass, whatever that means. I don't think that's pretty. 2-1, I think, is pretty good. I don't know how good 3 is compared to that. But that's when he really, his interest in Egypt really started to take off. And it was in 1902 he actually went to Egypt and started doing his own, or manage his own excavations. And he was also appointed the honorary reader of Egyptian archaeology at the University of Liverpool. And of course, that eventually developed into the Garstang Archaeology Museum, which is a very important museum right through to today. Personally, I've not been there yet, but I'm told it's pretty good. He eventually also held the first professorship in the methods and practice of archaeology, and this is when he and all held by Harold. And that in that slide there, the golden-headed falcon, golden head of a falcon. That's one of Harold's small sketches. So at this time, we have to mind that archaeology was still a fairly young practice, and up to this point was pretty chaotic. It was really treasure hunting, I guess. But Flinders Petrie sort of started to put this right. He started to record the sites he was working on far more carefully, and creating better records. And Harold certainly benefited from this, i.e. producing his work was used in a much better way, and the whole principle of archaeology moved on to a good level. Okay, so Harold, where did Harold work? And this is the word I struggle to get my tongue around. Hyrak on Polis. I don't know if that's right. Is it? Also Beni Hassan, which I think most of us, and Abydos, the latter two, most people, I guess, have been to Egypt, know quite well. And I mean, Arthur and Gwynedd and so on, they know very well. So that's where he worked. So they were on sort of shown on the map there, roughly where they are, and quite a large area. So there's a lot of moving about. Okay, so Harold actually did assist in the excavations for Garstang, and did the illustrations, and that was from 1903 to 1904. And the pictures here just show you some typical pictures from the Garstang Museum of the excavation sites as recorded at that time. And they're not Harold's photographs, but they do show you the sort of working conditions they were in. And of course, before photography, the recording was, as you see there, there's a pen and ink drawing of camels and things, and that's how it had to be done prior to photography. Because at this point, photography isn't that old. You're only talking 60 years old, perhaps, the art of photography. So there's Harold with Garstang, and there's a picture of them working there. Garstang is the figure on the right, and Harold on the left. And they're in one of the tombs at Beni Hassan, which they used as their office, laboratory, and so on. So really carrying on the sort of tradition that Petrie started. There's that classic picture of Petrie in the outside the tomb where he actually lived for quite a long time. And even today, they are using empty tombs to store material and stuff. And I'm sure if you've seen any of Ken's videos from recent times, it's still very much happening today. The next slide is a typical working day a scene of a typical working day in Abydos. And if you think now what we watch on the TV, the National Geographic programs, or so, whatever the Egyptology programs are on TV, things haven't really changed that much. It's still a lot of people moving sand basically, and uncovering what's treasures and items and facts that they can use to establish where they are, what they're looking at, and so on. So things, although the science has moved on and is much better, the practices are still the same. Okay, and as I said before, Petrie started the recording of finds a lot better than had been happening at that time. So this here is a typical, probably Abydos, but it's a shallow grave with a skeleton and a few artifacts within that grave, a pot, and so on. And first thing that he would do is a sketch of that burial and give it a number and everything else. And that's the same as what would happen today, except that the drawing would probably be a little bit more accurate. They'd use a meter square grid and produce a more accurate drawing. I mean, for example, in Haverfordwest in the last few months, actually in the middle of the town, they've been digging on the old priory, or yeah, I think it's a priory rather than a friary, and they've excavated over 300 skeletons, and every one has been recorded very accurately. It's answered a lot of questions, but it's also created a lot more questions, that one. But so that's still happening, but a little bit more accurately than what Petrie was doing. But at least Petrie was doing something. I'll keep pressing the wrong button. And he would then do a written description of what he was recording. And the two examples there, the sketch and the handwritten thing, are Petrie's own records. So, and Harold would have known Petrie. He would have had contact with him. Petrie would have seen Harold's work, so it was quite a important link there. And then their finds, obviously they would keep the finds, but they'd record them again very accurately. Nice sketches and a catalogue, so that they could identify in the future where they found the item and what its relevance was. So quite important. Okay, so after Harold had been there about 3 years, and he was getting a bit bored with working in those 3 locations, which were quite remote, certainly more remote than Carmarthen is. Like the bright lights of Carmarthen, he probably grew up there, and he was used to contact with more people. But he got itchy feet, and when he was commuting between Luxor and the sites, he did come in contact with quite a lot of people who respected him, respected his work, and people he wanted to probably work with. And it was at this time when he came in contact with Theodore Davis, the American billionaire who was actually working in the Valley of the Kings, and Davis had just discovered KV50, and there were some artifacts in there, and he asked Harold if he would produce some images of those artifacts, and they were a mummified dog and a mummified monkey, and that is the drawing, the painting that Harold produced, and exactly as they were found within KV50. So a wonderful example of recording what was discovered how it was discovered, how it was placed in that tomb, and for posterity really, so that it gives us an idea how the thing was set up. And of course, it turned out it was a pet cemetery, but so there was more stuff there. Okay, and so he was becoming a bit of a star, and at that time, Davis then thought he discovered the tomb of Queen Tai in the valley, and again he asked Harold to draw the shrine that was found within that tomb. And the example there is one of the drawings that Harold produced, which is quite beautiful, really. It's lovely. The shading is nice, and it's a piece of art, but it's also a very good record of what was found. And it was at this time that they started finding bits and pieces, and the next item, or the two items in fact, actually exist today in the Egypt Centre. As you can see, that's a piece of glass, which is a piece of colored glass that's quite tiny, about 2.5 centimeters wide, but so important, glass. Because glass, again, was something quite rare, I guess, at that time. And the Egypt Centre, in their Abbaset catalogue, record it as that 18th dynasty, Amenhotep's reign, a fragment of core-formed glass vessel with name of Amenhotep II, found in the Valley of the Kings. The rest of the vessel is in the Cairo Museum. And so anybody can go into Abbaset and discover things like this, which is great. And Ken, in his wisdom, moved on and found the Cairo picture of the Cairo pot as it is on display, and with the magic of Photoshop, actually moved the fragment. It wasn't Ken. I mean, he tells me it wasn't Ken, but moved the fragment into the pot so that we today can actually see what it might have looked like. I assumed it was Ken because he's a bit of a wizard with all this sort of thing, and yeah, you've gone down in my estimation. So, but that's important though. It's great. It's a good it's a good way, and of course today with the internet and everything else, things like this can be done much easier. Things can be stuck together that haven't been together for donkey's years. And another item in the collection here in Swansea is the gold leaf that was found at that same time, and I'm guessing that is perhaps from a coffin, or maybe it was somewhere where they were using the gold leaf to create this, stick onto the surface of a coffin or something like that. But that's a good little find, and something worth having. There are other items in Carmarthenshire, in the Carmarthenshire Museum at Abergwili, but the cabinet is so dirty you can't get decent photographs of it, and they're very reluctant to let you get inside the cabinet. But it's worth going to have a look if you've got the opportunity. And it's not a bad little museum. It's nice, and it's now been done up a wee bit. It's better than it was before the pandemic. There's a cafe there now and different things, so it is worth a visit. Okay, so Davis himself, so he really did take Harold away from Garstang. Voluntarily, he wasn't pulled along by his neck or anything, but Harold could see better things, I guess, for himself. Davis, he was a lawyer, and he was known for his excavations in the valley, 1902 through to 13, and he was a sponsor for the Antiquities Service, and was quite successful very quickly. He discovered KV45, the tomb of Usahet, a box containing loincloths made from leather above KV36, which is the tomb of my Herpy, sorry. And his sponsorship was renewed regularly right through to 1905. But of course, the excavations that he's credited with weren't actually, he wasn't doing them. And they were conducted by Howard Carter from 02 to 04 and James Quibble 04 to 05. And although Davies probably keeps that bit quiet in any reports that he did. And from 1905 onwards, he employed Edward Ayrton, and then Harold himself became an excavator in 1908 to 1911. And then finally, Harry Burton, from 12 to 14. All three carried out the excavations for Davis. And Burton moved on eventually to much greater things, which we'll see in a moment. In very bold statement was made by Davis in 12, and in his report he stated that I fear the Valley of the Tombs (brackets Kings) is now exhausted, so he gave up the concession, and it passed on then to Lord Carnarvon in 1915. So, what a mistake, eh? And that's life, I guess. It was probably getting a little bit harder to find stuff. What were they up to, 50 something? And still the number today is only 65. But you know, I suppose you have to make a decision at some stage. But it was during his time with Davies that Harold really did start producing some really, really nice artwork. And the first example I've got here is Pharaoh Sipter from KV47. Beautiful, beautiful piece of beautiful watercolor from showing what was appearing on the wall, and you know, as good as anything you could you'd want to see. Absolutely beautiful. And I've not been in there. I don't know what it's like today, but thank goodness he did record it to such a high quality. The next one is an image that shows Khepri and Khnum superimposed in Ra, the sun, with below that the crocodile gods Sobek, and then either side of that there's the hieroglyphs, which I'm assuming are a straight copy, and they probably could be read by an expert today. And again, it's thank goodness that sort of recording was made, and they were lucky to have somebody like Harold that could do this sort of work. And another one is a simple picture from KV47 again. Most of these are from 47, of Anubis, again wonderful. such detail, and the shading in the body there, absolutely spot on. And I think the final one in these examples is one of Isis. All these images are readily available. You can download them from most quite easily, and well worth looking at much larger, on a much larger screen or whatever. And because you are here, that you are looking at a bigger screen and seeing big image, but on a desktop it would be much better. While he was there working for Davies, he became very friendly with a guy called Charles Whymper. And when I came across this little thing, because I'm an ex-mountaineer, and I thought, Whymper? And when I did a bit of digging, I found out that he was actually the brother of Edward Whymper, who led the first ascent of the Matterhorn in 1865. And he was out there as an illustrator. And in 1908, they become very friendly. And in 1908, Whymper, as a present, gave Harold an original of the Sacred Ibis, which is again just wonderful work. And it's quite a bit of a coincidence that Harold was there as an illustrator. Charles Whymper was there as an illustrator, but Edward Whymper also went to the Alps originally as an illustrator. So it's a small world in that field, I guess. Another picture by Mr. Whymper, the hoopoo, which all people that have been to Egypt have seen these birds. Beautiful detail again. Cormorants, which an everyday sighting, and the sparrows, which yeah, they're the same as they are everywhere else here, and so on. And these examples are all from Mr. Whymper's book, Egyptian Birds, which was published in 1909. You can still get copies at quite a good reasonable price. Aid Books is probably one of the best directions to go to find some these. I think Ken's actually got his own copy of this. Yeah. Sorry?
I got mine here online.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, no, I've got mine online. Yeah. But not very much. I don't know what I paid, about £16, something like that. I don't know. And there's actually a sister volume to this, that not by Whymper though, by another artist, just entitled Egypt, and that's got quality pictures also, not of the monuments so much, more of life in Egypt at that time, which fortunately I've got a copy of that as well. But I was thinking of bringing it tonight, but I haven't. Okay, but it's a lovely book, and the quality of the printing in the book is top notch, and you know that because there's a tissue page covering it, protecting the images. Brilliant book. Okay, so we've mentioned three names that are all pretty well known: Lord Carnarvon, Mr. Carter, Howard Carter, and Harry Burton. So he had a lot of contact with these, and just going on looking at them and a little bit of what they did. So Carnarvon, he took over the concession in the Valley of the Kings in 1915, and we all know what that eventually led into. Carter was employed by Carnarvon, and just searching for missing tombs, which is pretty obvious, and we know really what the end result of that was. And there was a bit of a gap though from 1915 to 17 because of the First World War. So nothing happened at that time. But it all started up again in 1917. But Carnarvon was beginning to run out of money. Carter, though, managed to persuade him just to allow another season at least, which did happen, and that was actually when, bang, it all came good. November 1922, the 4th of November, in fact, and that's next week. That will be the centenary. And Carter was able to send a telegram to Lord Carnarvon, who at that time was back in the UK, saying, "At last we have made a wonderful discovery in the valley. Magnificent tomb with seals intact, recovered same for your arrival. Congratulations." So it all came good, and that we know now that the tomb of Tutankhamun had been found. And that's when Harry Burton comes onto the scene in Greater Things. Burton was English, but he worked for the Metropolitan Museum of Art as mainly as a photographer, although he was doing excavations, as we said earlier. And the museum, New York Museum, actually loaned him to Carter to do the recording photographically of the Tutankhamun tomb, and that took quite a long time, 8 years, and 14,000 photographs, and most of those are still in existence in the Griffith Institute in Oxford. Next few slides are just examples of Burton's work. Just spot on. Some people would argue that, and somebody's done it, haven't they? They've produced something that says Tutankhamun in colour. But I think that the colour takes the attention away from the black and white images. I'm a bit of a black and white snob, actually. Most of my photography I convert to black and white and print black and white anyway, my landscapes and all that sort of stuff. Because you actually do look at the picture then, whereas with colour photographs you miss too much of the detail. And this is exactly how it was when they got in there, and the work to actually produce those photographs is absolutely fantastic. They're not just snapshots like you'd go in there today with a digital camera and you'd have the machine gun approach. It was probably only taking 2 or 3 pictures a day on glass plates, and then having to process them as well, dusty atmosphere. There is a very good program actually on a BBC Two program, I think it is, where they actually go through the process that Burton would have gone through to make these images, and it was a struggle. They found it quite hard, but it's all worthwhile. Look at that! Look at the detail in that picture from the sarcophagus, and it's just lovely. The light's spot on though. He was obviously an expert in light. And if you want to learn about lighting, watch black and white films. And that's obviously the sort of expertise. He would have been good as a photographer in black and white films. And then, of course, that's his classic of the gold mask. And it's just exquisite. It's just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful picture. And then Carter's records were pretty good as well. And there's one of his record cards here where showing 3 Shabtis and then his notes to the right of the images, and he's included the text, the hieroglyph text that appear on there. So a really good, accurate. You don't actually need the item to be able to work out what it is or anything like that. And again, it's all of this is at the Griffith Institute in Oxford. Worth a visit if you can get in. And Ken, perhaps you should organise a trip. I'm sure you've been there.
I haven't been to the new exhibition.
Oh, yeah, have you been to the Institute though? Yeah. We went there with Rosalind Janssen, and it was a brilliant day. And the exhibition that we've just mentioned here, 2022 in Oxford at the Bodleian, this is a picture of the catalogue, which is a fabulous book. If you haven't got it, it's worth getting. I've not got it with me, but some years ago, a couple of years ago, Christine Riggs produced a book photographing Tutankhamun. I don't know if you've got that. Which I saw her lecture at the Exploration Society in London just before she published this, and it was a brilliant lecture. And this came out, I had to get it because of the Burton connection. It was a little bit disappointed because the photographs she put in there weren't many of the classics, and they were a bit small. But this book that's come out now, this catalogue, really does make up for that. So the two books together work very, very well, and it's just a fabulous subject. Christina Riggs' book is more technical. It's how the pictures were taken, the process it used to develop the glass negatives and so on. And but they're both well worth a read. Okay, so that's the people that Harold worked with, the people that we know, the famous people that we know that he worked with. And but sadly, during 1910, his tuberculosis became a bit of a problem for him, and he had been home, but he for a short time, but he had returned to Egypt, and it was here that Emma Andrews, who was with Davis, made this observation. Harold Jones is so poorly, so weak, quite incapable of work, but his brother Cyril keeps a certain supervision of his workmen. I don't know who Cyril was. This is the only record I've seen that he had a brother, because all the artifacts that went to Carmarthen Museum and here were donated, I believe, by his sister. So I don't know where Cyril fits in that. I need to look a bit more work into finding out what that is. And then sadly, the tuberculosis did finally finish him off. And the 10th of March, 1911, it did kill him, basically. He was only 34 years old. They didn't bring him home. He was buried in the Christian cemetery in Luxor. On his gravestone, I put tomb there, which is probably a bit grand. I think it probably was a gravestone. It was the statement was in bilingual. Blessed are the pure in heart, it said, but in Welsh. Right. I can't say it. Well, right, I'm told that isn't particularly difficult, but I couldn't say it. So really, that's the end of the story, sadly, and not a nice way to go. But he did contribute a lot to Egyptology, I think, and thank goodness he is commemorated in the town that he grew up, not born, grew up, with a blue plaque. It was actually put up by the museum, not the council, but the museum. And if it wasn't for that blue flag, I probably wouldn't have latched on to Harold. Certainly not before learning about things about him here. But what that's led on to, and I've got no slides on this next bit, but I will include it. And it's again in the Egypt Centre in Swansea here. You've got a series, I think it's 165 glass 2¼ inch square slides by a guy called Sergeant Jones. So is it Joe? No, Johnson. And his proper name, his full name was Sergeant James Mason Johnson. Again, he wasn't born in Carmarthen, but he lived most of his life in Carmarthen, and he lived to 101. And he died in Carmarthen. But these 165 slides are of his time in Egypt in the First World War. And Palestine, actually, he did both, and it was a trip he did from Aswan into Palestine, and also with this collection of slides are a couple of notebooks, which are his lectures, which I did transcribe for Ken, which I think you still got. You can have it again if you want. And it was quite interesting. The only sad thing is, though, there's no record of where he actually gave the lecture, and maybe he only gave it once, maybe more. I don't know. But such wonderful things, and how one thing leads to another within a collection, and yeah. So really, that's it. And I've already thanked Ken. The last slide is actually doing that again. And I'm thankful that thank you for listening, and I'm sorry I was late, but it was just out of our control. It was horrible that last hour. But okay, that's I hope that's all right for you.
Thank you very much for that, Peter. And I know certainly Harold Jones is the one that a lot of people kind of are quite interested about because of his excellent drawings.
Yeah.
His watercolors are second to none, really, I think.
Superb, yeah.
And of course, everybody is familiar with those from the work that he did in the Valley of the Kings in these wonderful tombs, such as KV 55, the mysterious tomb, etc.
Yeah.
I know most of them are in the Carmarthen Museum.
Yeah.
Have you actually seen them?
I've seen that. It's a simple case. It's not very big.
But they don't have all of them, I think, on display.
There is quite a lot. There's a little small mask that's covered with gold leaf. There's a few shabtus and a few other little things, but it's not a huge amount. But it's in such a horrible little corner, and you can't get far enough away to get absolutely a full picture. And because the glass is so dusty, it's very difficult to get a good shot. I tried for the talk, but it's worth going to have a look, because it's, as I say, it's a nice museum. There's some nice stuff in there. There's a wonderful stained glass window that's only a foot square of Lord Nelson, believe it or not, which was taken from Paxton Tower, which, when the tower was built, it was actually originally called Nelson's Tower and renamed Paxton Tower. But at least they saved the stained glass window. But it's tiny, and unless you know what you're looking for, which I didn't to start with, I expected a nice big window. I had to go, so where's this window of Nelson? And they go, no, you've walked past it 4 or 5 times, and it's in a box, light box, in fact, and you have to punch the button for the light to come on, you know. But no, it's a nice little museum. There's some good Roman stuff in there, and which is quite important. Yeah. Some new Roman stuff actually from the dig a few years ago. in Priory Street, which are quite important.
And Swansea Museum also have some
Yeah.
objects from Harold Jones.
Oh, right.
In fact, the two that you showed in the Egypt Centre collection are technically on loan from
Oh,
Swansea
okay.
Museum. So,
Yeah.
but they were also donated by the sister.
Yeah. So I don't.
That seems a bit mysterious, really, as to
Yeah.
who he is.
Yeah, and this Cyril, yeah,
Yeah.
it needs to do some digging. Perhaps try and find an obituary for
Yes, exactly. So,
Cyril Jones and trace it back from that, perhaps. Yeah, but he was obviously well liked, Harold,
yes.
and it's so sad that somebody like a bit like your friend Ramadan.
Yeah,
You know.
Rowland Museum.
Yeah, that was
Very,
so sad, and I can still remember those lectures he did.
Oh, it was fantastic.
They were wonderful, weren't they? And such a gentleman.
Yes, yes.
I can remember the first time when he was there in his open neck shirt, but he had a jacket on, and he asked permission
Yeah,
to take his
that's
jacket
right.
off.
That's right, yeah.
Quite old-fashioned, really. Yeah, a lovely man. Yeah, it's so sad. And his programs on TV, absolutely superb. And when you think back to Petrie, who started that recording, and he's taking it. Ramadan took it to another extreme. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, good.
Any questions from here?
The bit that command music from Mountain better with children.
Could you say it again?
Command museum Mountain better.
So the question was, do you think, in the audience here, do you think that the Carmarthen Museum could promote Harold Jones better for children and for school groups, etc.?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I think it was about 5 years ago. Ken might have been involved. They did have an Egypt project, didn't they?
I know they did one in
Abergwili.
In the 80s. They had one called
they did
Son of Luxor Sand.
Oh no, they did something just after we moved
Okay.
down, which I didn't get to, unfortunately. So I don't know. But you're quite right. No, they don't. They don't promote themselves, for goodness sake. And there's a lot of that, you know. Like Swansea, like the Egypt Centre, they've got a Friends organisation. They don't even communicate with the Friends. And as I tried to say to them, you've missed a trick, and used the Egypt Centre here as an example.
Yeah.
All through the pandemic, there's been contact with the outside world, and Ken's probably done it from his living room.
Yes. Yeah.
And Sam in her living room.
That's true. Yeah. They had problems with the roof.
Well, that was an odd one. Yeah, that was an odd one. They've done the roof, but only one side. The big thing that's changed, if you obviously know the museum quite well, the big thing that has changed is the entrance, and where that was collapsing by the stone was just crumbling. That's been fixed, and a nice glass door has been put in there, so that's nice. And next to that now, there is another building which isn't new, it was already there, but there's a cafe in there, and there's rooms, and you know the toll gate, the toll booth by the road, that's for kids. That's so when the school party goes in and it's lunchtime, that's where they go and have their lunch, I think. That was what the original intention was. But it's better than it was before the pandemic. Let's put it that way. Yeah, and the gardens there are absolutely top notch now.
I know Sam wants to visit there because she's got a figure there, and she's been trying to contact the museum.
Well, let me know, Sam, and
That was going to be my question, actually, Peter, if I could pick your brains for the contact.
Yeah, over to you, Sam, with questions from the online audience.
There aren't actually any questions. There's lots of messages of thank you, saying people really enjoyed it, that they hadn't really heard of Jones before, so it's been a good eye-opening experience. So just lots and lots of messages of thank you.
Yeah.
And from me as well, Peter, thank you so much. It's horrible that you've had to go through that horrible car journey and then jump straight into a lecture. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
You didn't even have a drink in your water.
No, not that. No,
Strong stuff, is it?
no, I wish. But no, it's not exactly a difficult presentation, was it? It's not as though you're talking technical things about temples or anything. But is that?
Oh, you can ignore them.
Yeah, okay. Something's come up on the monitor, and no, it hasn't come up on the screen now, has it? But yeah, no, it's great. I mean, I was getting a bit worried on the road, I must admit, coming in, but it always happens to me, whether I'm going to a funeral or something like this, I always get held up. It's a blooming nightmare.
And famous that way, avoid going through.
Yeah, to avoid coming through down the hill, because when I tried to come here before some years ago, I actually arrived in the car park at 20 to 8, and that was leaving home at sort of 5:30. But it's going home time. That's the trouble.
Well, I'm glad you made it.
Yeah, and I will try again, because I am a friend of the museum.
Yeah, good.
So
Yeah, you'll have to come down for
yeah,
future talks.
Yeah,
This is the first hybrid talk that we've done. So
oh, is it?
yeah.
Oh,
First one for the
I thought
Friends.
you'd done a couple before.
Not for the Friends of the Egypt Centre, so that's why.
Oh right, I assumed you had.
We didn't want to scare you off by telling you, Peter.
So thank you to those.
Sam, do you know when you're coming to Carmarthen?
Whenever they reply to my emails.
Oh,
I've been trying for a year, so fingers crossed. I'm gonna hopefully use you as an in.
well, the only advice I can give you is don't hold your breath.
Oh, fair enough.
If we can help, just let me know.
Oh, you're a sweetheart. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll try, because you can come to us, and when you do visit, because it's a long way to come just to visit one.
Oh, I've travelled a lot further.
Yeah, I'm sure you have. I know the feeling. Yeah. Anyway, okay, Sam.
But
let
thank
me
you so
know.
much for today, Peter. That was absolutely brilliant.
Oh well, I hope it was okay. Anyway, yeah. Okay, good.
Do you want to? Yeah. Again, thank you, Peter, for tonight's lecture and for coming all the way despite the traffic and stuff like that. So it's great to kind of have you here and to meet you in person.
Yeah,
finally,
that's right. Yeah,
after
nice.
everything on Zoom. And thank you to everybody who joined us online and who waited around for this. I think everybody waited around. I don't think anybody left. So that was good to see. Sam, I'm going to pass over to you if you want to finish up online in terms of the date of the next talk and stuff.
Yep, I have shared the link for the next talk in the chat. I'm just quickly sharing another link before I forget. So our next lecture is on the 16th of November, if I'm remembering correctly. Yes, it is. So we'll be starting at 7 p.m. Again, this will be a hybrid event. So if you are nearby to Swansea or fancy a little excursion, please do come and join us in person. It would be lovely to meet a few more of you. And otherwise, we'll be available on Zoom as well. There are tickets available now online via Eventbrite for those who are not members. If you are a member, you'll receive a link with the Zoom link in to use. Our speaker is Thomas Irish, and he's speaking about Thomas Whittemore between archaeology and humanitarianism. So that one is in just a few weeks, actually, 16th of November. So pop the date in your diary. Those of you that are members will be getting reminder emails about that. And once again, a massive thank you to our speaker and a massive thanks to our committee members in the room holding the fort. And we hope to see you all soon. Thanks, everybody. Take care.